Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Sandra, and I'm with the BC AdventureSmart program. Thanks for joining us tonight. Throughout this summer, we're having a few special events, and this is one of them. We're really excited about tonight's event and to share some of our messaging, but Stephen has a lot to share from his perspective. We've kicked off summer with 4 big events at the beginning of June. We have our regular webinars every Thursday, so if you're interested in more after tonight, if this is your first time joining us, you have an opportunity to join us at any Thursday or more than one Thursday throughout the summer, all summer long. We take a little break in the fall and then we do the same thing all winter. That's the night that we choose to do our presentations, and all of that can be found the same spot you found this event, and that's listed at adventuresmart.ca, where all of our BC AdventureSmart events are listed, but also on our Facebook page over at BC AdventureSmart. I'm grateful to be joining you tonight from the traditional territory of the Coast Salish peoples. And on National Indigenous Peoples Day, it's important to recognize where we are and where we recreate. I think it's timely, and I think what's important is what we do from this time onward, and how we can all be respectful of the land and pay more attention to where we love to hike, bike, paddle, and recreate outside, and that understanding can be increased. I have been with the AdventureSmart program for 17 years. Before this, I was a BC Park Ranger for a number of years and loved that job, and have been with the AdventureSmart program since the beginning. So 17 years is how old we are. And I work closely with the BC Search and Rescue Association and the 79 search and rescue groups in the province. They actually respond to a lot of search and rescue calls every year, hence why we're so grateful that Stephen's included some great safety tips in his book. We have a lot of information to share, and we get to do this full time as our job to help reduce the number and severity of those search and rescue calls. In BC every year, there's 1,700 plus search and rescue calls every year just in British Columbia. So the more you can do to get informed before you head outside, the better, and it will help them. I've said we a few times. Behind the scenes tonight, we have our assistant coordinator and tech support this evening, Natasha. She'll pop in here and there, her voice will, and help us run the show from behind the scenes. So thanks again, Natasha, for your support. But without further ado, you've come here to hear a little bit from me, but really our special guest tonight is Stephen, author of Destination Hikes, and we're really excited to have him. He's going to introduce himself and run the show for a bit, and then I'll come back, share some safety information, and you can save your questions because we'll get to them near the end of the presentation. Welcome, Stephen.
Thanks for having me, Sandra. It's great to be here to talk a little bit about the new book and to share some safety tips. So this is me. So I'm Stephen Hoy. I'm the author of the new book, Destination Hikes in and around southwestern BC, and I also wrote the book 105 Hikes, which came out a few years ago. I'm a former journalist, and now I'm in communications and doing a lot of hiking and writing books. I'm coming at you from East Vancouver. I'm in Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh territory, and like Sandra said, on National Indigenous Peoples Day, it's a time to reflect on how we recreate on these lands, and to think about how we can go beyond land acknowledgements and take action. So yeah, the new book, Destination Hikes in and around southwestern British Columbia. I call it the thrilling sequel to my first book, 105 Hikes. Essentially, it's a book of 55 hikes, 55 new hikes, in addition to the ones that are in 105 Hikes, and it covers a similar region and of southwestern BC, and it's pretty excited to get it out there. And so, Destination Hikes. So it's called Destination Hikes for a few reasons. One is that the focus is on hiking to super scenic destinations or intriguing destinations in and around southwestern BC. We're talking, like it says on the cover, swimming holes, mountain peaks, waterfalls, and more. And it's been kind of a 3-year journey to get to this point. where destination hikes could come out. And it's so the book has, like I said, 55 new hikes. There's 700 kilometers of trails, and there's over 300 hours of hiking in the book. And of course, it took more hours of hiking because that doesn't include the wrong turns and the extras and the hikes that didn't make it in. And the book has a topographical map for each hike, and there's a ton of photos, 131, and it's almost 60,000 words. I often say that the hiking part is the fun part, and the writing part is the painful part of books. And I'm honored that Cecilia Point, Musqueam political activist, opens the book with a wonderful foreword, urging hikers to reflect on the original peoples of this land, and to treat the land with respect, and to think about these things as they go about on the trails. So yeah, so this is the region covered by the book. It's kind of like a circle around Vancouver in a way. You're going up to Pemberton, you got over to Manning Park, down to Bellingham and North Cascades a bit, and a bit on the islands. And so this is the kind of a similar region to that covered by my first book, 105 Hikes. But like I said, these are different hikes. And yeah, so we were talking about those destinations, and so yeah, waterfalls is one of them. This is on the Echo Lake Trail on Monmouth Creek, a beautiful waterfall hike. Big trees are another focus of the book. I love old growth trees, and especially since I was looking for them, I saw a lot more. And so this is Sigurd Creek, Crooked Falls, and there's the trees in this picture aren't that huge, but there actually are quite large trees in this area. And wildflower meadows are one of the other destinations. Often people ask me, well, I like hiking, and I'll say I like the flowers, and if they're not into hiking, then they kind of look at me funny. But if you hike, summer wildflower season is a huge draw, and these are spreading phlox, one of my favorite flowers, on the way to Flora Pass over in the Chilliwack Valley. And on a hot day like today, I mean, the best thing we could do is go jump in a lake. So I do love lake swimming, especially after you come down from a mountain. And so this is Statlew Lake, probably one of my favorite swimming holes in the book, and it's over near Harrison Lake. And this is the view from the viewpoint up at Mount Killam in Howe Sound. And yeah, I love these coastal hikes because some of these, especially these island hikes, they're good all year round, and they have wonderful scenery, and plus any excuse to ride the ferry is always nice. And of course, it's all about mountain views. So this is above Blowdown Pass in the Duffy Lake corridor, and this is a wonderful spot. It's really interesting. It's kind of got a mining past, and it's on the edge of the storied Stein Valley, and there's on this peak here, there's quartz and mica all over the ground, kind of sparkling. It's a really wonderful place. One of my favorite places from the new book. And so it's not just about scenic destinations for me. It's also about like intriguing and interesting places. And so history is a huge draw for me in hikes. And so there's this is a fire lookout on Mount Hallowell, but also just in general very interested in shedding light on the indigenous and colonial history of these trails. There's a lot of history in the trails in the book, and so one of the best things about writing a guidebook, I think, is having a chance to delve into that history, and this fire lookout is sort of a physical manifestation of that history. And along the same vein, geology, southwestern BC has such amazing, volcanic and glacial landforms. Whether it's the cinder flats over at Garibaldi Park, or over here we have the Eocene granite of the Coquihalla Pass area. That's Yak Peak over there from Zoa Peak. Yeah, so the 55 hikes in the new book, we've got charts. People love the charts, so there's sort of a key here that helps you pick a hike depending on the destination and the difficulty and the quality, so you can see quickly which hikes have waterfalls and which hikes have swimming holes, or which ones are kid friendly, or which ones are good most of the year. And there's also a checklist for those of you who like to really like to try to finish a whole book and check off the hikes. There's also an appendix in the back that has all the numbers in the chart, distance and elevation and whatnot, for a quick reference. And so if you've seen my previous book, 105 Hikes, this is quite a similar layout to that one, except that instead of 2 pages per hike, there's 4 pages per hike. So that leaves room for a lot more photos and a lot more information, like better, more in-depth driving directions, more in-depth hiking directions, more information about history and nature of the trails. So this is the general format. You see that there's icons in the top left that correspond to those special feature destinations, waterfalls, swimming holes, history. You've got the topographic map, photos. In the vehicle directions, whenever there's a gravel road, I make it clear whether it's 2-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive. Also in the destination theme, in some ways the hike is the destination of the day trip. So every hike has a stop of interest. In this case, you see Alexander Falls, a waterfall. Sometimes it's a wetland, it's a heritage site, it's a museum. It's something interesting, place to stop along the way to the hike, or that's near the hike that is worth a stop. And sometimes that stop sheds light too on the geology or the history of the hike you're going to be going on. So yeah, in the beginning of the book, we have some sections on safety tips, and we have a section on outdoor ethics and etiquette. And so yeah, I'm glad to be able to share some safety tips from the book here. One of the core AdventureSmart messages is to follow the 3 T's, and Sandra's going to get more into this later. But the 3 T's are trip plan, train, and take the essentials. And this first one, trip planning is huge. Of course, you should do your research. When you're doing a hike, read about where you're going. This could involve reading destination hikes, checking online apps and trip reports, and just finding all the up-to-date information you can about the hike, and then leaving a detailed trip plan with a reliable person, not just anybody, not just any friend, but a reliable person with information about, tell them your route, where you're starting from, what kind of equipment you're taking, and when your expected return time is, and they should know when they should call the authority, when they should call 911 if you're not back by a certain time. And this will help search and rescue teams find you. Otherwise, it's sort of a needle in a haystack when they're looking for you. I mentioned consulting road and trail reports. Here in the picture below, we have the Helm Creek Trail. We're approaching Helm Pass in Garibaldi Provincial Park, and this is probably what it looks like about now, right? It's summertime. You might think it's all dry up there, but there's a lot of snow. in the subalpine and the alpine. And so it's important to check current conditions before you head out, because if there's a lot of snow, you might need your micro spikes, different kinds of gear, and the hike could take a lot longer, could be a lot more difficult. So you want to consult those road and trail reports. BC Parks has updates on the provincial park website, so you go to the the Garibaldi Provincial Park website and check the latest trail report. You can also, of course, go to sites like All Trails and Bivouac and find out, or the Washington Trails Association for the stuff south of the border, and find out some info on the current conditions. You want to be careful going off Instagram and Facebook, because those pictures often are not current photos. It's the prettier the picture is, the more likely it's not a photo from currently. It's a photo that was edited a while ago. Or so yeah, consult those trail reports. Check current conditions. A key thing is to note the sunset time. I mean, right now the sunset is the latest it'll be, but you always want to note sunset time before you go, and it can surprise people, in August and September when sunset is getting earlier and earlier. The accidents and people getting lost. I mean, a lot of that happens when people find themselves in the dark. Even if you have a headlamp, even if you know where you're going, it's very easy to get lost or injured in the dark. So you want to set a safe turnaround time and stick to it. So you want to think carefully about getting back before sunset, and setting a good time for that, and then just stick to it. Don't try to keep on extending. I'll go a little bit farther, because it's better to avoid those situations. Now the essentials. So these are the basics that you should bring on every hike, and so there's 10 of them, but there's more depending on what activity you're doing, or what kind of conditions you're in. So these are the basics. First one is navigation. So this is having a map. I like to have paper maps with me. These ones are topographical maps, compass, GPS device. I like having paper maps and compasses, just because they don't need batteries. But of course, GPS is quite useful for a lot of people. Now, a headlamp. That means having a headlamp and having extra batteries for it, because there's nothing more useless than a headlamp with no batteries. I was once on a trail where people's hikers' headlamps had gone out, and they were just waiting in the dark for people to come, and we ended up taking them with us on the way out, because we had headlamps. And yeah, headlamps way better than a flashlight. You don't have to hold it and it points in the right direction and all that. Sun protection. Sun protection is important. Sunglasses, sunscreen. Could be long sleeve t-shirt, could be a sun hat. Stuff that'll help you. One, not look like a lobster, but also kind of avoid things like heat exhaustion, heat stroke. I've gotten heat exhaustion before. It's not fun. Of course, if there's a lot of snow too, your eyes really take a hit. So yeah, sun protection is important, especially now in summertime. Yeah, and of course, it's the first aid kit. There's, of course, you want to have band-aids in there. You want to have like moleskin, blister pads, all sorts of other stuff. And luckily you can buy prepackaged first aid kits at outdoor stores. There's a knife, and this could be a multi-tool. I basically, the idea is you can repair things. you might have duct tape is also another thing. It's a repair kit. Yeah, you need to be able to fix a broken snowshoe or that broken backpack or whatnot. So a knife but duct tape is duct tape is such a savior. It's great to have duct tape along, and duct tape also just helps your gear last a long time. You can fix a lot of things with duct tape. Fire starter, of course, you need to keep warm. You need to if you're stuck out there in emergency. So you want to have waterproof matches. It could be wet. A lighter is good too. I like to carry both. Sometimes you might want to carry kind of fire starter as well, because it's pretty hard to light a fire out there sometimes, especially if it's wet or cold or whatnot. Yeah, so you always want to be able to make sure you can survive the night. Whether that means a tent or emergency blanket kind of depends on the season and the weather. But yeah, it's important to think about, could you survive the night when you go on a day hike? And it's always good to have extra food. You need to have extra food. It's amazing how many calories you can burn on a hike, especially a long one. So make sure to have extra food. Plus, you might need to feed someone else who's hungry. Water, of course, is a big deal, especially in summer here. And like often when you're getting tired or cranky or whatnot, it's in the outdoors. It's often because you haven't had enough water. You're dehydrated. So you want to carry extra water, or you want to have tablets or a purifier filter to be able to treat water out there. And yeah, but you also need to be mindful of where there are water sources, and if there are water sources, and in summertime that could be difficult to find up high in the mountain, especially. Yeah, and extra clothes. I mean, this is a big one. It might be sunny out. It might look like it's not going to rain, but you want to make sure you have layers, something for the rain, something insulating. You always want extra clothes. It'll help you survive the night, help you be comfortable when it's windy on the summit. If there's unexpected rain, it's extra clothes. So bear spray. Is everyone carrying bear spray? There's also bear spray is the best bear deterrent. It's pepper spray. You spray it at the bear, and it's more than likely you're not to repel them. There's also things like bear bangers, air horns. But I mean, bear bangers. I last summer there was a bear coming at a friend and our campsite, and just wouldn't stop. So I fired a bear banger at it, and literally the bear just kind of stepped back a meter and kept on coming. It took more rocks and yelling to get the bear to go away. But bring bear spray, and you also want to make sure that you're not attracting bears to your campsite if you're doing an overnighter. So you can use bear-proof canisters, and you can, or bear hangs, and you can use the ones that are provided, or of course fix your own, and make sure they're a ways away from your campsite. Hiking with a group is pretty important, especially if you're new to hiking. Probably shouldn't be solo hiking to start. It's a lot easier especially if you stay together. I mean, if you're in a big group, those big groups, and you get split up and all that doesn't help either. You could get lost. But hike with a group, and stay together, and you're more likely not to get lost, and also you have people, you can take care of each other. And the other thing is, if you hike it in a group of 3 or more people, you're far less likely to see a bear attack, or to have negative bear encounters. Now, I know everyone likes to use their cell phone for pictures, GPS, in my case, notes. But it's important to make sure you have battery for your cell phone. Whether that means, and the best way to do that is to turn off your cell phone, and you got to keep it warm and dry as well, so it doesn't drain the battery. You can also carry, charger, extra battery, and or a separate device, a satellite communicator or a personal locator beacon. I carry a personal locator beacon. But I mean, when you think about all those stories on the news where you see, North Shore Rescue, I mean, it's because somebody called on their cell phone, and they called 911. And if you don't have battery, you won't be able to make that call. Or if you have very little battery, you might get on the phone and then, have very little time to provide that information. And so it's you want to make sure you have a cell phone or battery power for that emergency. And the important thing is to call 911 as soon as you realize you're in trouble or you're lost, because if you call someone else, you might run out of battery before you actually call 911, and you need to call 911 in order to activate search and rescue. Just to mention on the maps that are in 105 Hikes and Destination Hikes, they also appear in an app called Overdue, which is a trip planning and navigation map that's done by the map maker who helped me make the maps for these books. And the maps for the books are available free in this app. So if you have this app, you can use it in tandem with the books, and the maps are in there. I mentioned that Overdue is a trip planning app, and AdventureSmart as well also has its own trip planning app that is excellent. And using these apps, has those fields that help you fill out a detailed trip plan that'll be really useful to your emergency contact and to search and rescue if you're in trouble. So thanks for coming tonight, and I'll turn things over to Sandra.
Thanks, Stephen. Oh, the sun's creeped in there as I was watching you. Thanks, that was great. It gave all our listeners a chance to learn a little bit more about the hikes, what you like as well, and how you've put it all together and made such a great resource for people who can really explore these areas. Like the areas that you've covered, really, what they do is they hit the biggest regions in our province that have the most calls, search and rescue calls. So this is a great resource. We talk about getting informed, and we talk about all these things you should do in the research, and what you provide is one of those tools, which is really, really helpful. You've taken all the time and effort to go out and check it out and write about it and put it all down in this one neat little package so that everybody else can gain from that and have access, know what they need to drive, pretty much, where they should go, spots of interest, and everything you've shared there, and some resources in additional to safety. So kudos to you, and we really appreciate the effort you've put into adding that safety piece, because I think there's a lot of resources and books out there that offer hiking trail information in other parts of the province. Let's just talk about BC for now. But yours has that extra component where they can find that little bits, and I think when all the pieces of the puzzle are put together, it really makes for a better, safer adventure for everyone who uses your resources and ours. So they get to benefit from both, right? So that's awesome. I think I'm just going to share my screen here and talk a little bit about, you talked about the safety, the 3 T's, which is great. I'm going to jump in and share with our audience a little bit about what to do in an emergency. And that's what I'd like to jump into. But before I do that, Natasha, can you toss up a question, if you don't mind? And I'd love to ask the audience one of the questions you're going to put up, which I think they're going to be in the order that I'm remembering here, is that if you're lost in trouble or hurt in the mountains, when should you call for help? And this is a biggie. I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty about what to do here, and I'll explain to you, but I'm curious what you think now, and how you think this should be managed when you're out there if there's an emergency and you need to phone. Are you going to wait 2 hours? Are you going to wait about an hour? Are you going to phone ASAP, or are you going to try to get out yourself? And we've seen all these scenarios. I'm curious what you share with us tonight, what you think you would do in your group, in your hiking group. Let's just talk about hiking, because that's what it's all about tonight, and this season actually. So it's the biggest search and rescue user group that needs search and rescue as hikers right now. So 50% of all of our hiking incidents are down here in this area. So it's a really big, important piece that we need to cover. So once Natasha's tallied that and you've given us your answers, it's always helpful for me to see. I need to move something first. ASAP, okay, thank you. That's the first time we've had everyone say right away. That's exciting for us as educators to know that you know that. There's no delay there whatsoever. Beautiful, perfect. I'm going to move over to here and share a little bit about what you need to do in an emergency. And it still seems like it's on. Hang on, I'm going to back out for a second. It's still on the pool. I'm going to come over here and say goodbye to you. Sorry, it should be sharing, but I see that it's only the poll still. Just give me 2 secs. This happened the other night and I had issues. Hang on. Oh, there we go. I did something, not sure what it was, but it's where I need it to be, and we're in business. Great. What to do in an emergency. So you're lost, in trouble, or hurt, something's gone down, and now you need to know what to do. And that first initial piece is to stop moving, to make sure that you're not wandering around. You're not going down a creek, a gully, a ravine, or any natural draw. We need you to stay. Search and rescue needs you to stay in one spot. Don't move around. So the stop analogy allows us to break that down. So as you've stopped, an emergency of some sort has happened. And we know, based on data-driven insights, that the 3 main causes for search and rescue are injury, lost and disoriented, and exceeding your abilities. So maybe you need to check and see if someone's hurt. Maybe that's why you've stopped for this emergency. Are you able to apply first aid or any emergency care? And I would hope so, based on your training that you've had, wilderness first aid, bushcraft, general first aid, and or are you lost? You know, one of the top reasons is lost and disoriented, and maybe you just need to reorientate yourself and get back on track. Maybe you're just missing a trail marker and you're not disoriented anymore. So check in once you've stopped. By stopping, it allows you to go through these paces. The next section here is to think. So how will you contact search and rescue? Well, Stephen mentioned it a few times, as we know that you've left a trip plan somewhere, somehow, through our app, pen and paper, a text, trailhead selfie, you phone someone. Believe it or not, we can still phone each other. Maybe there's some way you've left a trip plan. So that's how you will contact search and rescue. So you already have that piece in place. Now you'll use your communications device that you're carrying, which isn't relying on your phone. It's another means of a communications, a Zoleo, InReach, or Spot. These are pieces of gear that you buy in addition to your other pieces of gear. So you have that emergency contact communication. And then, will anyone know you're missing? They will, because you've left all that information on your trip plan. It's all laid out for them. They know everything about when you're supposed to be back or not. Will anyone know where you are? Again, absolutely. So we keep defaulting back to that trip plan, and we know that you've left the region, the mountain, the trail, the destination, which is home, but the peak, and the route. So the finer details are shared. And when should you call? You've already told me you know what to do there, and it's going to be as soon as you can. And are you prepared to treat a medical emergency? Hopefully you have some risk management under your belt, and that could be that first aid and some form of training. And do you have the essentials to keep warm and dry? Stephen mentioned a wonderful list we've got there. That's the basics. And then you just add to it season and sport specific. I was up on the mountains on Friday. We're doing some work up over on Mount Seymour, and we had our crampons, we had ice axe, we had extra pieces that are still applicable for right now, based on the conditions, based on the amounts of snow still up there in 30 degrees. It's going to start to go, but it's still there. There's lots to melt. And it's important to think about this part of the thinking stage of stop. So that's pretty critical. And just to let you know, anywhere in British Columbia, if you call for help, there's no charge to you. There's absolutely no charge for you. A quick little comparison here to Alberta versus British Columbia. That beautiful mauve color in Alberta is where we do have reception, where they do have reception and clarity for communications. We come back into BC, and that band or that corridor of that same color is pretty minuscule. So everywhere else, there's an issue for communication. With your phone. So let's think about those extra pieces that I mentioned, that Zoleo device, the Spot, the InReach, some form of that two-way communication, but you have to check and see what features yours that you purchase offer you, how it works in the region you're going to go hiking in, and what are the fees that go along with it, if it's monthly, annual, can you use your phone with it? There's a number of great features on all of them. So carrying that other piece of communications device, and like Stephen said, travel with my phone on airplane mode. Take some pictures because you always like to share later, but I'm saving my battery as much as I can, or it's off, and I'm saving that for in case I do need it. The observation piece to our stop analogy is for you to look for those hazards and the dangers that are in your area. And in the summertime, that could be too much exposure to the sun and this heat. It could be too close to the edge of a really steep cliff or loose rock. Near the water, it could be near swift water, or there's a danger of cold water immersion. Wintertime, avalanche conditions, under a cornice, near a tree well. Have a look around and see where it's safe for you to be and not to be. Can you make a shelter? You're going to have to think in this frame of mind that when you make a call, they often do come in just as sun sets. Average call is about 8 hours long, and you need to now make shelter. Can you make that with what you've carried in your pack? And are you capable of doing that? And this goes back to the training piece of our 3 T's. And then if you can see a spot that's a little bit more open and clear from where you've stopped, that would be a good spot to be. If you see a helicopter, hear a helicopter coming over, that's where you could signal. Make yourself huge, bright, bold. Otherwise, just stay right where you are. Only if you can see a clearing from where you've decided to stop. The planning phase here is when you get to go into action. So here's when you get to use the essentials you've packed in your pack. You've got everything that Stephen mentioned there. You might need to make a fire. You need to build your shelter, keeping warm and dry, putting those layers on as the temperatures decrease. It's still chilly as the evening hits. And if you're anywhere where there's snow, you're exposed. Maybe you have wet, cold feet because you didn't wear the right shoes today, and now your feet are soaked. And now you have an issue of wet and cold socks. Hopefully you've got extra socks in there. Just try to think of those scenarios of those what ifs. What if my friend twists his ankle today? What if we slide down this slippery, slushy snow and hit our head on a couple of exposed rocks or a tree, or still fall in some of the tree wells or through some of the sinkholes because the creeks are running below? It's not to be pessimistic, but it's to be prepared so that we can actually plan for those emergencies, because the whole idea is to be self-reliant and self-sufficient for self-rescue, and that we can manage our situation. Of course, we phone when we need to, but the idea is to manage that as well as possible. Natasha, could you throw up another question for me, and then I'll continue on here, but I'm thinking the next one might be in relation to calling for help. So when you need help, who should you call first? This is an interesting one, and there's been great examples of what to do and some really unfortunate incidents of what to do. So should you phone your friend who knows the trail in the area? We all know someone who knows these areas really well. Maybe your parents, wife, brother, family, siblings, because they're worried. Maybe that's a good one. The local police or RCMP, or should you phone search and rescue volunteers? These are some really good options to think about. So when you need help, who should you call first? That's the key word in that sentence. Who should you call first? This is always a really good one. So you pleasantly surprised me on the last one, and it was great. So I'm curious to see what happens on this one. We'll see what everyone answers. And thank you for joining us, by the way, on such a sunny evening. We could all be out playing, but awesome. The majority is local police or RCMP. That's it. The number's 911. you know, your friend might know the area, but that delays the call to immediate help who can actually task out the search and rescue. And the 19% that said search and rescue, they don't have a phone number. You can't phone them directly. I can't phone them directly, even though I know the 2,500 search and rescue volunteers. I can't call them for this anyway. You have to go through police. Any search and rescue call in the province of BC, the tasking agency is the local police department or the RCMP. Then they recruit the local search and rescue group with the abilities that are needed for that call. Might be swiftwater, backcountry, high angle cliff, mountain rescue, ground search and rescue. So they'll recruit. So the first number you phone is 911. Thanks, Natasha. So the planning phase is a biggie, and in understanding all of that, I did mention the 8 hours. That's based on that data. We know that there's some calls that last over a week, unfortunately, and there's some calls that last only a few hours. Down here on the South Coast, we see action happen quickly. We're really fortunate. There's a number of search and rescue groups that are in the South Coast here that respond all the way from Pemberton all the way to Hope. That's 2 collective regions for search and rescue. We've got the Sea to Sky region, and then we also have the Fraser Valley. So between those 2, that's where the majority of the calls happen. And the busy SAR groups and volunteers, unpaid professionals, they don't get paid, are a little bit busy. And so if we can mitigate that, that's what we're here to do as much as we can. Let's talk about clothing. I'm going to take a big fat guess that you are dressed in cotton tonight. I know I am, and that's the last thing we need to be wearing when we head outside. It needs to be a synthetic layer, all of them. The first layer is really close knit, close fitted to you. It's synthetic, so it can wick away that moisture and dry really fast. The cotton will stay wet and keep you cold, too cold. And that layering system allows you to regulate. The middle is thermal, the outer is a protective, and then the air in between helps you insulate. You can regulate with pit zips, take on, take off, put on, and that will do the trick if it's all the right materials. Creating a fire and knowing how to do that, hopefully you know how to do that safely with the rations you've got in your pack. So I removed the lint from my dryer and put it in little Ziploc bags, a couple of Bic lighters, candle, and create my own little fire kit. Cheesies work really well, potato chips are awesome. There's many means of a fire starter, but having that in your bag to use versus what's outside. And then shelter. Here's a really good example of someone who's probably taken a bushcraft course, and they've got 2 emergency shelters used there. One's on the ground with some flora and fauna underneath. It looks like it's raised, maybe to create a bit of a distance and space between the ground. It might be damp. The roof is nicely done, leaned up against that tree with a lean-to and some fire there. So this is also what you need to do when you go into action to create your space that you have to hang out in until search and rescue find you, which might be a couple of hours, it might be overnight. Let's think what you might look like to the search and rescue volunteers. This is a view from a helicopter looking down past the skid, which is underneath the helicopter. And us as subjects or hikers who need help, we need to think as big as possible. How will they see me? It's tricky to see. Like if you look down amongst all the greens and the browns and the trees, it's hard to spot someone, but if you're bright and you're visible and you're big, then it's a lot easier. We just had a special event here on June 1st. It was for the South Coast, and one of our special guests was one of the helicopter pilots from Talon, who does a lot of work throughout the Sea to Sky corridor and on the North Shore, Jarrett. And he said, you know, if you've got a light source that you can, headlamp that you can flicker, and that's really easy for him to see. A really small fire is really easy for him to see, and the spotters and the aircraft. So there's ways that you can signal and communicate. So be seen, be heard, leave clues, make yourself a clue, and do your best to put yourself in their eyes. And as I wrap up, before I move on to the next slide, I have one more question for you. So I'll sum up this. Natasha, if you queue up the last poll, we want you to stay and practice and really make it a culture of the 3 T's. Trip planning, training, and taking those essentials are really, really important. So when choosing an emergency contact, let's think about who you would think that would be. You're going to leave your trip plan with this person, and who should it be? Should it be a close family member like your mom or your dad, an ex-partner, a forgettable friend, a person who knows you well, knows the area, and trustworthy? search and rescue volunteers often tell us that this is a big piece that's missing, is that they haven't even left a trip plan with anyone. So the more detail that you can leave with someone, the better. And I'm curious who you would leave it with, because they have a big job to do. If something happens and goes down, they have to go into action. They have to be calculated, accountable, and they have to then step up to the plate and know what to do. Here we go, a close family like mom and dad, that would be an obvious choice, and it's not going to be a bad choice, but the better choice would be someone who knows you well, knows the area and what you're doing, and is trustworthy. And I say that because let's just say family members have that direct connection with you, and they will be worried like crazy about you and may not go into action mode as well as someone who's a decent friend, recreates with you, knows that area very well, is very calculated, trustworthy, and you can count on them. And there's somewhat of a distance there emotionally. You're still friends, but they're not a family member. So just a little tip there. And as we wrap up, please practice in making that plan, leaving the trip plan behind, having the proper training for the activity that you love to do. Be physically fit and ready for these hikes. There's some awesome hikes around here that are super easy to get to, but they can give a false sense of security if we're not prepared. And then take those essentials every time. And don't forget to add the extra bits. You will need them right now. You know, I was grateful I had the microspikes with me on Friday, and that I had some sunscreen and extra pieces and the ice axe. Actually didn't need it where we went, but walking stick, the conditions are still dicey with some snow. And if you haven't downloaded our trip plan app already, it's free of charge. You can take your phone to camera mode, as you may know, scan over that QR code, and that will take you directly to it. It's free, and it's there for you to use anytime you like. We use it regularly when we do road trips, when we go for hikes, mountain bikes, and it's a really easy tool. And I always send a notification to my emergency contact, and I also check off my name on it so that when it notifies my emergency contact, it notifies me, just for some weird reason that maybe I'm back early or forgot to complete my trip plan. It lets me know that I need to complete my trip plan. So it's super, super handy. Thank you. Awesome. We'd love to open up to any questions. Maybe Natasha can chime in here, and Stephen and I will come back on camera and answer any questions you have before we wrap up at 7 o'clock.
Excellent. So we do have a question from Chandra, and they're asking, do you guys arrange guided treks or group treks? We don't, but we do offer this education. So I'll let Sandra and Stephen elaborate on that a little bit more. But yeah, we don't offer them, but they may know where to start.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? Sorry, I was concentrating on the light coming through the door. Are they looking for guided hikes, Natasha?
Yeah, so Chandra is asking, do we arrange guided treks or group treks? So either Stephen or us.
Yeah, so from our perspective, we don't arrange anything that's guided. We are an awareness program, and we're here to offer this and some face-to-face when we can again, and offer the resources. But there's organizations like Urvana, ACMG, you can hire a guide, which is awesome. And but we don't do that personally. We don't offer any hard skills. We just talk about the soft skills and send you in the right direction. Stephen, did you have any suggestions?
Yeah, I don't offer guiding as well. I write the books, but yeah, I would check out the Association of Canadian Mountain Guides. Look for a qualified guide. Also, join an outdoor club. North Shore Hikers, Chilliwack Outdoor Club, and those aren't guided trips, but you can go together with people who are novices and people are experienced, and they can help you learn the trails and find out about the area and learn about safety and outdoor ethics.
Awesome. Yeah. Sorry, Sandra, did you have anything to add there? Okay, awesome. We do have a great question from Leona. It's about it looks like a two-part question. It's come in. Do we have any recommendation of emergency communication devices, and are satellite phones good enough? So I'll start off. Satellite phones, there is sections in British Columbia where even satellite phones don't work. So we still do need to leave that trip plan. And we do have in our handout section the Making the Right Call brochure, which is a federal document, and it just speaks to the different types of communication devices that are fit for your adventure. So Sandra, I'll let you guys elaborate a little bit more on that as well.
Yeah, I forgot to mention earlier in the handouts, Natasha did just mention, we've got 2 resources there and you can click on them and keep them in your files. We've got the brochure, Making the Right Call. That jumps into some nitty gritty about different comms devices that can help you learn a little bit more. And then our resource list also gives you a bit more information there about how you can communicate safely, where you can get some courses, where you can hire someone, take a map and compass. So both of those are excellent resources. And you know, we reference a few here in our presentation, so did Stephen as well, but doing that research for what works best for you, what fits in your budget, works for the region that you're in and what you're comfortable in using. And it's no different than an avalanche transceiver. Well, it is, but my example is it's no different than looking for and researching and buying an avalanche transceiver or a communications device or any piece of gear. I need to know how to use that piece and maybe get a little training on it and get to learn about it a little bit more. So they're all great. Do that research for you and how it fits in with your abilities as well.
Yeah, I definitely check out those resources in the handouts. Those are excellent documents. Yeah, I mean, I carry a Ocean Signal Rescue Me personal locator beacon, a PLB, and so you know, it's not like a satellite communicator like the Garmin InReaches. You can't send messages back and forth. So if you want that peace of mind of being able to send messages back and forth to you know, contact or potentially with search and rescue, this isn't it. But what the PLB does is it has a strong signal and it doesn't have a subscription. And you register with the government and it uses, you know, publicly available communications technology like satellites, and can get a signal out if you activate it, that will alert emergency authorities to your location. So that's what I carry, but definitely do a lot of research before you decide on, you know, whether to buy a satellite communicator or a PLB or something else.
Awesome. This is a good question from Nancy. So is there any way to improve preparedness for hikers via BC parks, e.g. weather conditions like mountains? I was at Mount Seymour yesterday and bumped into a handful of hikers who didn't know where they were and weren't aware there would be snow at the top. So definitely reach out to BC Parks, Nancy. You know, the more we can have people giving their feedback with BC Parks and just asking for things like that, the better. And again, I'll let Sandra elaborate if she has anything more to add to that.
Yeah, you know, we work closely with the land managers in where we recreate, i.e. Parks Canada, BC Parks, Metro Band, District of North Vancouver, any muni or district in knowing what those trail conditions might be, because they vary depending on work they're doing on the trail, water running, creeks overflowing, trees down, so they'll update. You know, one good example is on Mount Seymour, Dog Mountain is closed currently. Metro Vancouver manages that trail and that trail is closed for until further notice. So that is on their website. It's in there, a few pages in, but it's in there. And so you have to take that a little extra time to search. And here's one example that we do talk about when you're planning your travel route and your navigation. It's important, and one of the most important steps in understanding what that difficulty is in comparison to your experience, ability, and time. So thank goodness BC Parks puts up a bit of a trail report there, and you can check it out no matter which park you're going into. Check out those sites and see what they have, so you know that you can plan your activity and hike within it, figure out the estimated time to do it, understand the conditions you're about to get into, versus just heading up to North Shore Mountains and picking Cypress and you're going to head out to St. Mark's and you have no idea what's going on out there. Use the resources, and that would be land managers' websites to start.
Exactly like Sandra said. I mean, BC Parks does a pretty good job of updating the trail reports. If you go to the specific park websites, they do a pretty good job, especially in the summertime. It's maybe less updated in the kind of the low season, but so the information is there. But at the same time, you have to understand, like, you're going into the backcountry. It's not a walk in the proverbial park. I mean, you can't really expect there to be a giant signboard everywhere, telling you, what the conditions are going to be like. It's just about, being prepared for the range of conditions you might reasonably expect to hit on the trail. And, right now that means, even though it's summer officially, there's a ton of snow in a lot of places.
Excellent. Yeah, we've got a good question here from Sue. Any tips for avoiding encountering a bear, and when would you use spray? We'll point you towards wildsafe.ca for that, Sue. WildSafe is the authority in our province for that. They have also just released a new course as well. So yeah, that's definitely something. I'll let Sandra and maybe Stephen speak to that. Sandra definitely has wildlife training and a bit more than myself. So yeah, I'll let her elaborate.
Yeah, WildSafe BC is an excellent resource. North Shore Black Bear Society offers some great information. So depending on where you are, I'm not sure where you're sitting, you know where we are, have a look and see. Those two are excellent. WildSafe BC is the provincial resource, and the new training course is great. It's virtual and it's an awesome tutorial, and it's worth having a peek at. Taking some training there and understanding a little bit more what our responsibilities are. What I learned last year, I did an Instagram live chat with a friend of mine. She's also a subject matter expert in bear awareness, Ellie Lamb. What I took away from my chat with her is that we need to communicate and be communicating with these bears. Stephen shared an example of a bear that kind of came up to their camp a few times ago when he was out, and how they had to, communicate with the devices they had. And then it sounded like they did some rocks, and they used their voices, and they had, banger and all these things. And again, it goes back to the gear that you have and that you know how to use it. So if you've got that bear spray in the holster and it's right here, easily accessible off the pack strap or on your hip, because you've practiced, how quickly you can get that out of there and have it ready to go, and that you're aiming low, working up high. There's all these little bits and pieces that through WildSafe BC you'll learn. You can scroll through our Instagram, go to the Instagram live and listen to Ellie and I have a little chat last summer, and she will share some great insight with you too. But making the noise, always talking with my group when I'm out hiking or mountain biking, and being ready. I was out for a hike last summer. Where were we? Lynn Loop, actually. And it was when that aggressive bear, for lack of a better term, was roaming around, and there were 6 or 7 of us, and he was, or she was, aggressive and confident and kept coming towards us, and we all did what we knew to do. So my group and we all went into action because we all knew what to do together, so no one had to tell anybody what to do. We got together, we made ourselves bigger to appear bigger. 2 of them instantly had their horns out. A bunch of us had rocks in our hands, but it took all of that to deter this bear. So knowing what to do in your group is key.
Great tips from Sandra. The Get Bear Smart Society is also great up in Whistler. I'll just leave it at
that. This is a good question from Lijuan. I think this is the name, Lijuan. Why does Alberta have better phone coverage than BC? Well, it's topography. So the mountains are what causes us to not have good phone coverage. It's definitely not a funding issue. They put towers where they can, but if the mountains are too high, and it's, towers don't survive winters on BC mountains either. I lived in Rossland for 3 years, and there's a cell tower on the top of the ski hill. We would go for 5 days, 6 days without cell service when something would break on that cell tower in the middle of winter, because it's under 30 feet of snow and they're trying to dig it out and get it fixed again. So that's simply why we don't have such good cell phone coverage here. I have one more question, and this is a good one, and we can finish off with this one, and then I'll turn it over to Sandra after. Stephen, what inspired you to start writing these books?
Oh, I've just always documented my hikes. I was taking notes back in high school even. when I first started to have the dream of writing a guidebook. I just love hiking guidebooks. I've got, you know, dozens of them on my bookshelf. Tons of, it's basically my bookshelf is just guidebooks. And I love the information that's in them, the context the great guidebook can provide that goes beyond, you know, just turn by turn, you know, whether it's safety, nature, history, culture. And yeah, I love guidebooks. I love how they are, you know, conduits for passing information down from kind of generation to generation. And I think guidebooks are a great way to share knowledge about safety, ethics, all that. And I love writing them, even though it's painful sometimes. I definitely I love it. So it's definitely yeah, that's all.
Thanks, Stephen. I appreciate it. Thanks for the pain. Then actually, we appreciate the sweat and tears that went into it, and it's easy to see. It's a beautiful book again, and we appreciate your support because it does support our community of hikers, of outdoor recreationalists, and it's very considerate of our SAR volunteers. And I think that's what we like to emphasize too when we're sharing our message at AdventureSmart in BC, is that this is a very supportive and considerate of our SAR volunteers when we all take the time to learn where to go, how to get there, and how to get home safely, and try to avoid, if we can, our best to our abilities, all those 2,500 SAR volunteers, even though they're there 24/7. So thank you, Stephen. I appreciate you joining us tonight. It was really great to see you again, and all the best as you move forward. And hopefully we can do it again down the road. But
thank you so much, Sandra, and thank you for all you do with AdventureSmart. It's amazing the messaging you have and the informative resources you have for outdoor safety.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Our whole team does. And as I close for everybody else, I hope you have a great summer. Don't hesitate to join us at any Thursday event as we go through our webinars, and we run through these on a regular basis. We might have 1 or 2 more special events coming up soon. We've got those up our sleeves. We'll announce those in the near future. And you know, I hope the app is helpful. Our webinars are helpful. Special guests like Stephen are helpful, and we can all enjoy what's about to be a wonderful summer. And let's reduce the severity of those calls even, and that's also success, and that's a big deal. So thanks for your support. Have a great time out there, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Good night.